How could signing everything away, my house, my car, my money, leave my wife so shaken she forgot how to smile? What did I know that made her own lawyer lose his temper in court, while I sat there calm as a lake? This is how I gave up everything she asked for, but walked out with my dignity, and delivered the kind of payback you only see in stories like this. The kitchen of our new house still smelled like fresh paint and unfulfilled promises. 2 months into living in what Lana called our dream home, I was beginning to understand that dreams and nightmares often wore the same face. Evan, could you at least try to look successful when the neighbors come over? Lana Mercer stood at the granite countertop, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the stone. At 35, she was still stunning, the kind of woman who turned heads at grocery stores and made other men wonder what she was doing with someone like me. I looked up from my coffee, watching our 9-year-old son Mason push cereal around his bowl. What do you mean? I mean that rusted Honda in our driveway looks like it belongs in a junkyard, not in Willowbrook Estates. She gestured toward the window where my reliable 2015 Civic sat next to her gleaming new BMW SUV. Gregory drives a Tesla. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what my husband does for a living? I'm an engineer, Lana. Same job I've had for 15 years. A maintenance engineer, she corrected, as if the distinction carried some kind of social disgrace. There's a difference between designing rocket ships and fixing broken air conditioners. Mason's spoon clinked against his bowl. Why don't you and Dad laugh anymore? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lana's expression softened for a moment, but then hardened again as her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. "Finish your breakfast, sweetheart," she said to Mason, then looked at me. "The Hendersons are having that BBQ tonight. Try to, I don't know, be more engaging. Maybe talk to Gregory about his investment portfolio instead of boring everyone with stories about HVAC systems." Gregory Shields, Lana's coworker at the marketing firm downtown. 38 years old, divorced, and wealthy enough to make my annual salary look like pocket change. He'd been showing up to more and more of our social events lately, always with some excuse about being between relationships and needing friendly faces around. "Dad, are you coming to my soccer game tomorrow?" Mason asked, his voice small. "Of course, buddy. I wouldn't miss it." "Will Mom be there too?" Lana was already heading upstairs, her phone pressed to her ear. "We'll see," she called over her shoulder. "I might have plans." That evening, the Hendersons' backyard buzzed with the forced cheerfulness of suburban networking. I stood near the grill, nursing a beer and watching Lana work the crowd like a politician. She wore a sundress that cost more than my monthly car payment, her laugh ringing out every time Gregory whispered something in her ear. "Tough break, man." Jared Hanks appeared beside me, holding 2 fresh beers. My neighbor was one of the few people in Willowbrook who didn't treat me like furniture. "Want to talk about it?" "Talk about what?" He nodded toward where Lana and Gregory stood by the pool, their heads close together as they shared some private joke. "That." I watched as Gregory's hand briefly touched Lana's lower back, a gesture intimate enough to make several other wives exchange knowing glances. "There's nothing to talk about." "Right." Jared took a long sip of his beer. "Well, if you ever need anything, a place to crash, someone to watch Mason, whatever, you know where to find me." Before I could respond, Lana's mother materialized beside us like a perfumed storm cloud. Denise Mercer had never liked me, not from the day I'd met her daughter in college. At 61, she still dressed like she was competing with women half her age, and her disapproval of me had only grown stronger over the years. "Evan, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Lana tells me you're still driving that old car. Surely you could afford something more appropriate for her image, if not your own." "The Honda runs fine, Denise." "I'm sure it does. It's just that when Lana brings Mason to my country club, people notice these things. They wonder why her husband can't provide better for his family. She glanced toward where Lana and Gregory were now laughing at something on his phone. Of course, some women eventually realize they deserve more than fine. The words hit their target. I excused myself and went looking for Mason, finding him sitting alone on the Hendersons' front porch, playing a game on his tablet. "Hey, buddy, having fun?" He shrugged. "Mom said I couldn't go in the pool because I didn't bring my good swim shorts. She said the ones I'm wearing make us look poor." Something cold settled in my chest. "You're not poor, Mason. We have everything we need." Then why does Mom always look sad when she looks at our house? And why does she smile more when Mr. Gregory is around? I sat down beside him, searching for an answer that wouldn't shatter a 9-year-old's understanding of his world. Before I could find one, my phone vibrated with a calendar reminder. Loan payment due. Check docs. The notification made me think about the folder of paperwork sitting in my home office, documents that Lana had never bothered to read, signatures she'd trusted me to handle. For 2 months, she'd been bragging about our dream house to anyone who would listen, never asking about the details of how we'd afforded it. As I watched Gregory help Lana to her feet after she'd accidentally stumbled near the pool, their eyes meeting with unmistakable electricity, I realized that some questions were about to answer themselves. My home office was really just a corner of the garage that I'd claimed as my own, complete with a second-hand desk and a filing cabinet that had seen better decades. But it was mine. And more importantly, it was where I kept all the documents that Lana found too boring to examine. I'd met Lana Mercer during our junior year at State University. She was studying communications with dreams of working in marketing or public relations, while I was grinding through engineering courses and working nights at a campus computer lab to pay my bills. She was everything I wasn't: confident, social, effortlessly charming. When she agreed to go out with me, my roommate actually asked if I'd paid her. Those early years were good. I helped her with statistics homework while she taught me how to talk to people without stuttering. After graduation, when she got accepted to a prestigious graduate program in Chicago, I followed her, taking a job with a mechanical contracting firm and sharing a studio apartment that barely fit a bed and a desk. "You're going to be somebody important," I used to tell her as she stressed over presentations and networking events. "I'll just be the guy who keeps the buildings running while you change the world." She'd laugh and kiss me, saying that was exactly why she loved me, because I believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. For 3 years, I worked overtime to cover most of our expenses while Lana focused on her studies. When she landed her first job at a boutique marketing agency, making more money than I'd ever seen, I was genuinely proud. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony that Denise complained about for years afterward. "You could have done so much better," I'd overheard her telling Lana during our engagement party. "He's a nice boy, but nice doesn't pay for the kind of life you deserve." Mason arrived 2 years later, and for a while, we were happy. Lana's career flourished while I provided the stability, steady income, reliable schedule, someone who could handle the midnight feedings and daycare pickups when her job demanded late nights and weekend conferences. But somewhere along the way, stability became boring. My reliability became predictability. The qualities that had once made me a good partner started feeling like limitations to a woman whose world was expanding while mine stayed the same. "Don't you want more?" she'd started asking about 3 years ago. "Don't you want to grow? To challenge yourself?" "I like my job, Lana. It pays well, has good benefits, and I'm home every night for dinner with you and Mason." But Gregory started his own consulting firm. He's making 6 figures and traveling to conferences in Europe. "When was the last time you even applied for a promotion?" Gregory again. Always Gregory. The pattern had been building for months. Little comments about my appearance, my car, my lack of ambition. Jokes at dinner parties about how she'd settled for a simple man. suggestions that Mason needed to see what real success looked like if he was going to amount to anything in life. Last month, at Mason's school carnival, I'd watched her flirt openly with Gregory while I ran the ring toss booth. Other parents noticed. I could see it in their awkward glances and sudden conversation changes when I approached. When Mason asked why Mom was holding Mr. Gregory's hand while they looked at his art project, I'd made some excuse about crowded hallways and people helping each other navigate. That night, I'd found Lana on the couch with her laptop, scrolling through real estate listings for houses we couldn't afford. "Just looking," she'd said when I asked. "Don't you think Mason deserves to grow up somewhere nicer? Somewhere that reflects our success?" "Our success?" "Well, my success. Your contributions." The house in Willowbrook Estates had been her idea, her obsession. When I'd explained that we couldn't qualify for a mortgage that size on our combined income, she'd pouted for days. When I'd finally found a way to make it work, a complex arrangement involving loans and credit that she'd been too excited to examine closely, she'd thrown her arms around me and called me her hero. "See? I knew you could figure it out when you really tried," she'd said, signing papers without reading them. "This is exactly what our family needs." Now, sitting in my garage office at 11 p.m., I pulled out the folder marked Property Loans Details and spread the documents across my desk. The truth was all there, in black and white, waiting for someone to pay attention to the fine print. My phone rang. Patricia Dalton, my attorney, calling late as usual. "Evan, I've been thinking about our conversation today. Are you absolutely sure you want to proceed with this approach? You're giving up a lot." "I'm sure, Trish, but I need you to double-check something for me. Can you verify the exact terms of the asset transfers we discussed, specifically the house and car paperwork?" "Of course, but why? Is there something I should know?" Through the thin garage wall, I could hear Lana on the phone in the kitchen, her voice bright with laughter. She'd been having a lot of late-night phone calls lately, always stepping outside or moving to another room when I entered. "Just want to make sure we get everything right," I told Trish. "I don't want any surprises in court." "All right, I'll review everything tomorrow. But Evan, whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with the consequences." After hanging up, I sat in the quiet garage, listening to my wife's muffled voice through the wall. She was discussing weekend plans with someone, mentioning a wine tasting and a new restaurant downtown, plans that apparently didn't include me. I looked at Mason's school photo pinned to my bulletin board, his gap-toothed grin and trusting eyes staring back at me. Whatever happened next, he was the only thing that truly mattered. Everything else was just paperwork. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when I found Mason sitting on his bed, still in pajamas, 20 minutes after he should have left for school. "What's wrong, buddy?" "Mom said I'm going to live with her full-time after the divorce." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his hands were shaking. "She said you agreed to it." I sat down beside him, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. "When did she tell you this?" "Last night. She said we're going to move somewhere even nicer, and Mr. Gregory is going to help us, and that you'll visit sometimes, but I shouldn't get my hopes up because you'll probably be too busy with your new life." Lana had crossed the line, using Mason as a messenger, filling his head with plans I'd never agreed to. It was manipulation at its cruelest. When I confronted her in the kitchen, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "He needed to know," she said, applying lipstick in her compact mirror. "Children adapt better when they understand what's happening." "You told our son that his father won't be part of his life." I told him the truth. "You're not exactly father of the year material, Evan. When was the last time you took him anywhere exciting? When did you last buy him something that made him proud to show his friends?" "I took him to the Science Museum last weekend." "The free Science Museum, with your expired membership." She snapped the compact shut. "Gregory took his ex-wife's kids to Disney World for spring break. That's what successful men do for their families." That afternoon, I found myself sitting across from Gregory and Lana at Riverside Cafe, a trendy spot downtown where everything cost twice what it should. Lana had insisted on this meeting to discuss the transition like adults, but from the moment I arrived, it was clear I was the third wheel at their date. "Evan, buddy," Gregory said, his arm casually draped across the back of Lana's chair. "I want you to know there are no hard feelings here. Sometimes people just grow in different directions." "Is that what happened?" Lana leaned forward, her engagement ring catching the light. She was still wearing it, I noticed, though she'd moved it to her right hand. "What happened is that I realized I deserve more than settling for good enough. Mason deserves more too. More than his father? More than a father who can't provide the kind of life we want." Gregory's smile was practiced, the kind he probably used in sales presentations. "Look, the house, the car, the lifestyle Lana's gotten used to, you can't maintain that on a maintenance engineer's salary. It's not personal, it's just math." "The house and car are mine to give," I said quietly. "Well, technically they're community property now, so they're ours to divide," Lana corrected. "But I'm glad you're being reasonable about it. Gregory says most divorces get ugly because men's egos get in the way of practical solutions." Gregory nodded sagely. "I told Lana she's lucky to have a husband who understands when it's time to step aside gracefully. Not every guy would be mature enough to accept that his wife has outgrown him." They were talking about me like I wasn't there, discussing my marriage like a business transaction that had run its course. When Lana excused herself to the bathroom, Gregory leaned closer. "Between you and me, Evan, this is the best thing for everyone. Lana's been miserable for months, and that affects Mason too. Kids can sense when their parents aren't happy." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "I'm planning to propose to her after the divorce is final. Give her the kind of wedding she deserves, the kind of life she should have had from the beginning. You've got it all figured out. I'm a planner. That's how I built my business, how I bought my house in Maple Ridge, how I lease a new car every 2 years. He gestured around the expensive cafe. "Success isn't an accident, buddy. It's about making smart decisions and knowing when to cut your losses." When Lana returned, she was glowing with excitement about something on her phone. "Gregory, look at this listing. It's perfect. 5 bedrooms, 3-car garage, and it's in Mason's current school district." "Beautiful," Gregory said, not even glancing at the screen. "We'll go look at it this weekend." "We?" "Well, I mean, if you're interested in my opinion." He backtracked smoothly. "As a friend." But Lana's smile told a different story. "I'd love your opinion. You have such good taste." I left them there, planning their future over overpriced lattes, and drove to the Honda dealership where I'd bought Lana's BMW. The same salesman who'd helped us 2 months ago looked nervous when I asked to review the paperwork. "Is there a problem with the vehicle, Mr. Carver?" "No problem. I just need copies of the lease agreement for my records." "Lease agreement?" He pulled up the file on his computer, his expression growing more uncomfortable. "Sir, I want to make sure you understand the terms we discussed, the monthly payments, the mileage restrictions, the early termination fees." "I understand perfectly. My wife is taking over the vehicle. She'll need to know all the details." His relief was visible. "Oh, good. I was worried there might be some confusion about the financial obligations. Some people don't realize that lease transfers include all existing terms and conditions." From there, I drove to First National Bank, where Faye Rivers, our loan officer, greeted me with professional courtesy and barely concealed anxiety. "Mr. Carver, how can I help you today?" "I need copies of all documentation related to our house loan. Everything." "Of course. Is this for refinancing purposes?" "Property transfer. My wife will be taking ownership." Sam's fingers paused over her keyboard. "I see. And she understands the current loan balance and payment schedule?" "She will. Because the remaining balance is quite substantial, and with the adjustable rate clause that kicks in next year." She trailed off, studying my expression. I'm sure you've discussed all of this with her. We've discussed everything that matters. That evening, I sat in my garage office with a thick folder of documents spread across my desk. Every signature, every clause, every fine print detail that Lana had been too excited to examine when we'd moved into our dream house and she'd gotten her perfect car. Through the wall, I could hear her on another late-night phone call, her voice animated as she described her plans for redecorating and her excitement about starting fresh. She was talking about paint colors and furniture arrangements, about the kind of life she'd always wanted and finally felt brave enough to claim. My phone buzzed with a text from Trish. "Reviewed the paperwork. Call me tomorrow. We need to discuss strategy." I looked at Mason's school photo again, then at the folder of documents that would change everything. Outside, Lana's laughter drifted through the night air as she planned her new life with Gregory, confident that she'd already won everything that mattered. She had no idea what she was about to inherit. The mediation office smelled like leather and false civility. Francis Morrow, Lana's attorney, had the kind of confidence that came from 30 years of taking men like me apart in divorce proceedings. At 52, he was silver-haired, sharp-suited, and expensive, the kind of lawyer Gregory had recommended and offered to help pay for. "Let's cut to the chase," Morrow said, spreading documents across the mahogany table like a poker player revealing a winning hand. "My client is seeking primary custody of the minor child, full ownership of the marital residence at 847 Willowbrook Drive, complete ownership of the 2024 BMW X5, and 50% of all joint bank accounts and retirement funds." Across from him, Patricia Dalton looked like she was watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. Trish was a good lawyer, practical, thorough, and genuinely concerned about her client's welfare. Right now, she looked like she was representing a man determined to ruin himself financially. "That's quite a list," Trish said diplomatically. "It's a fair list," Lana interjected, her voice crisp with newfound confidence. She sat beside Morrow like a queen holding court, her designer handbag placed strategically on the table to catch the light. "I think we're being more than reasonable, considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked. Morrow smiled the way sharks smile at bleeding fish. "The circumstances of a marriage that has clearly run its course due to incompatibility of goals and lifestyle expectations." "You mean because I don't make enough money?" "I mean because my client has needs that aren't being met," Morrow replied smoothly. "She's a successful professional woman who deserves a partner who can match her ambition and provide the kind of life she's worked to achieve." Lana nodded along, her expression a mixture of vindication and pity. "Evan, this doesn't have to be ugly. We both know this marriage hasn't been working for a long time. I'm trying to make this as painless as possible for everyone involved." "Including Mason?" "Especially Mason. He needs stability, and frankly, he needs to see what success looks like. Gregory has already offered to be a positive male influence in his life." Trish's pen stopped moving across her legal pad. "I'm sorry, who is Gregory?" "A friend," Lana said quickly. "A very close friend," Morrow added with a knowing smile. "Someone who understands the importance of providing properly for a family." I looked at the list of demands again, then at Lana's expectant face. She was waiting for me to fight, to argue, to make this difficult so she could paint me as the unreasonable one. Instead, I turned to Trish. "Give them everything they're asking for." The room went silent. Morrow's pen froze mid-signature, and Lana's confident expression flickered with surprise. "Evan," Trish said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss this privately before—" "No need. The house, the car, the bank accounts. She can have all of it. I just want joint custody of Mason." Morrow recovered first, his smile returning with predatory satisfaction. "Well, this is refreshing. Most men let their egos get in the way of practical solutions." "I'm not most men." "No," Lana said. and for a moment, her voice carried an odd note of sadness. You're really not. After the mediation, Trish cornered me in the parking lot, her expression somewhere between bewildered and furious. Evan, what the hell are you doing? You're handing over everything you've worked for. I'm giving her what she wants. You're giving her what she thinks she wants. There's a difference. Trish pulled out her phone. I reviewed those documents you asked me to check. The house paperwork, the car lease. Evan, there are some things we need to discuss. Such as the fact that your wife is about to inherit a lot more than she bargained for. Trish's expression was grim. Are you absolutely sure about this strategy? Because once we file these papers, there's no going back. I'm sure. That evening, I found Lana in the kitchen, practically glowing with triumph as she talked to her mother on speakerphone. He didn't fight anything, Mom. Not the house, not the car, not even the custody arrangement. Francis said it was the easiest mediation he's handled all year. Well, finally, Denise's voice crackled through the speaker. Maybe he's finally realized he was holding you back. Gregory must be relieved. Gregory's been wonderful through all of this. He keeps saying how proud he is of me for finally putting myself first. I cleared my throat, and Lana looked up, not bothering to hide her conversation. Mom, I'll call you back. Evan just walked in. Tell him I said thank you for finally doing the right thing. Denise's voice carried clearly before Lana ended the call. So, Lana said, turning to face me with arms crossed. Francis says we can have the final papers ready by next week. The house transfer, the car title, everything. That's fast. That's what happens when people are mature about these things. She moved around the kitchen with proprietorial confidence, already acting like sole owner. I've been thinking about redecorating. Maybe something more modern, more sophisticated. Gregory has some great ideas about opening up the space. Gregory's been here? He stopped by this afternoon to look at the kitchen layout. He thinks we should knock out the wall between here and the dining room. She gestured expansively. Create more of an open concept, you know? More entertaining space. We? Lana's cheeks flushed slightly. I mean, he was just offering friendly advice. He has excellent taste. I'm sure he does. That weekend, I made a quiet trip to First National Bank. Sam Rivers met me in her office, a thick envelope of documents already prepared on her desk. Everything you requested, Mr. Carver. Complete loan documentation, payment schedules, and transfer paperwork. She hesitated. I have to ask, does your wife understand the full scope of what she's taking on? She understands what matters to her. Because the adjustable rate increase next year is substantial, and with the current market conditions. Sam trailed off, studying my expression. Well, I'm sure you've explained everything to her. I've explained everything she wanted to hear. On Monday morning, a thick envelope arrived by certified mail, the final divorce decree, ready for signatures. Lana signed her copy immediately, practically dancing around the kitchen as she called Gregory with the news. It's official, she said into the phone, her voice bright with excitement. Well, almost official. We just need Evan to sign his part, and then we can celebrate properly. I took the papers to my office and spread them across my desk next to the bank documents, the car lease agreements, and the property transfer forms. Everything was there, every detail carefully documented, every obligation clearly spelled out in the fine print that Lana had never bothered to read. My phone rang. Trish. Last chance to change your mind, Evan. Are you absolutely certain about this? I'm certain. Then God help us all, she said quietly. I'll see you in court Thursday morning. Thursday morning, the final hearing where Lana would officially claim everything she'd demanded, everything she thought would solve her problems and give her the life she deserved. She had no idea what she was about to win. Moving out of the house felt like shedding an old skin. I packed my clothes, my books, and the few personal items that actually mattered, leaving behind the furniture and decorations that Lana had chosen to create her vision of suburban success. The hardest part was going through Mason's room, deciding what to take for the apartment I'd rented across town. I left most of his toys and games, but packed a bag with his favorites, the robot he'd built with me last Christmas, his collection of science books, the baseball glove we'd been breaking in together. "Dad?" Mason stood in his doorway, watching me fold his clothes. "Are you really not going to live here anymore?" "That's right, buddy. But you'll come stay with me on weekends, and we'll have our own place to do fun stuff." "Will it be as nice as this house?" I looked around the room with its expensive furniture and designer wallpaper, all purchased with money we didn't actually have. "It'll be different, but it'll be ours. Mom says this house is too good for you anyway." The words hit harder than they should have, coming from a 9-year-old who was just repeating what he'd heard. "What do you think, Mason? Am I too good for this house? Or is this house too good for me?" He considered this with the seriousness that kids bring to important questions. "I think houses are just houses. You're my dad no matter where you live. That's right, and that's never going to change." Downstairs, Lana was in full celebration mode, rearranging furniture and making lists of renovations she wanted to start immediately. Gregory had been there when I arrived, measuring windows for new curtains, but he'd made himself scarce when I started carrying boxes to my car. "You know," Lana said, appearing in the kitchen doorway as I loaded the last box, "I never thought you'd be this mature about everything. Most men would have made this much more difficult." "I'm not most men." "No, you're not." She leaned against the doorframe, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different, if you'd just tried harder, wanted more. I wanted you to be happy. I know. But wanting me to be happy and actually making me happy are two different things." She straightened up, her moment of vulnerability passing. "Anyway, this is better for everyone. You'll find someone who appreciates simplicity. And I'll finally have the kind of life I've always dreamed about. With Gregory. Gregory understands ambition. He understands that life is about more than just getting by." Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a smile. "Speaking of which, he's taking me to look at engagement rings this weekend. Nothing official yet, but congratulations." "Thank you. I think you mean that, which is more than I expected." She paused at the kitchen window, looking out at the BMW in the driveway. "I love that car, you know. It makes me feel like the person I was always supposed to be. I'm glad." That evening, I met Trish at her office for our final preparation session. She had the completed paperwork spread across her conference table like evidence in a criminal trial. "Last chance, Evan. Are you absolutely sure about this? Because once we walk into that courtroom tomorrow, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure." "Even about the custody arrangement? You're giving her primary custody with you getting every other weekend and alternating holidays. That's not much time with Mason. It's what she wants. But is it what you want?" Trish leaned forward, her expression intense. "Evan, I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone give away this much without a fight. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Because if you are, we can postpone." "I'm not having a breakdown. I'm giving my wife exactly what she asked for." Trish stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. "All right, but when this goes sideways, and it will go sideways, remember that I tried to talk you out of it." "It won't go sideways. Evan, your wife is about to become responsible for a mortgage payment that's going to increase by 40% next year, plus a car lease with payments that would choke a horse. She thinks she's getting assets, but what she's really getting is exactly what she deserves." The next morning, I stood in the courthouse lobby, watching Lana make her grand entrance surrounded by her support team. Gregory wore his most expensive suit, his arm around Lana's waist, like he was already her husband. Denise flanked them on the other side, practically glowing with vindication. Francis Morrow brought up the rear, his briefcase swinging with the confidence of a man who'd already won. They looked like a victory parade. Lana had chosen her outfit carefully, a navy blue dress that projected serious professionalism while still showing off the figure that had caught Gregory's attention. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her smile bright with anticipation. "Evan," she said, approaching me with Gregory in tow, "you look nice. I'm glad you dressed appropriately for court. Wouldn't want to embarrass anyone." "You could never embarrass me," she said, and for a moment she sounded almost sincere. "Whatever our problems were, you're a good man. You deserve to find someone who appreciates that." Gregory extended his hand with practiced magnanimity. "No hard feelings, Evan. This is the best outcome for everyone involved." I shook his hand, noting the expensive watch, the manicured nails, the confident grip of a man who'd never doubted his right to take whatever he wanted. "Congratulations," I said. "I hope you get everything you're expecting." Trish appeared at my elbow, looking like a lawyer heading toward a grim ordeal. "Ready?" "Ready." The courtroom doors opened and the bailiff called our case. As we filed in, I caught Mason's eye in the gallery where he sat with Jared, who'd offered to bring him so he could see the proceedings. My son gave me a small wave, and I waved back. Lana squeezed Gregory's hand one more time before taking her seat at the plaintiff's table. Her smile was radiant, confident, victorious. She had no idea that her victory was about to become her nightmare. Judge Margaret Thornfield had been handling divorce cases for 15 years, and her expression suggested she'd seen every possible variation of human greed and stupidity. She reviewed the paperwork with methodical precision, while the courtroom waited in tense silence. "This appears to be a fairly straightforward asset division," she said finally. "Mr. Morrow, please present your client's position." Francis Morrow stood with the theatrical flourish of a man who lived for moments like this. "Your Honor, Mrs. Mercer is seeking a clean, equitable division of marital assets. She will assume full ownership of the family residence at 847 Willowbrook Drive, complete ownership of the 2024 BMW X5, primary custody of the minor child, and 50% of all joint financial accounts." "And Mr. Carver's position?" Trish rose slowly, like a woman walking toward an unavoidable reckoning. "Your Honor, my client agrees to all terms as presented." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even Judge Thornfield looked surprised. "Mr. Carver, you're agreeing to give up the family home, your vehicle, and primary custody of your son?" I stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. I don't want to fight. Take everything, just not our son completely. I just want to remain in Mason's life." Lana's smile could have powered the courthouse. Behind her, Gregory squeezed her shoulder, and Denise dabbed at her eyes with what might have been tears of joy. Morrow was practically glowing with professional satisfaction. "Well," Judge Thornfield said, "this is certainly refreshing. Mr. Morrow, do you have the transfer documents prepared?" "We do, Your Honor." Morrow opened his briefcase with a flourish. "Complete property transfer paperwork, vehicle title transfer, and custody agreement." "Ms. Dalton?" Trish stood again, her face pale but determined. "Your Honor, we also have documentation prepared. However, I feel obligated to ensure that all parties understand the full scope of what's being transferred." "Meaning?" "Meaning that when Mr. Carver transfers the house to Mrs. Mercer, she'll be assuming not just ownership, but all existing financial obligations associated with the property." Morrow waved dismissively. "Standard procedure, Your Honor. Mrs. Mercer understands that home ownership includes mortgage responsibilities." "Does she understand the specific terms of those responsibilities?" Trish asked quietly. For the first time, Lana's confident expression flickered. "What do you mean, specific terms?" Trish opened her folder and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "Your Honor, I'd like to present the complete loan documentation for the property in question." "Objection," Morrow said quickly. "This is a simple asset transfer. There's no need to—" "Overruled," Judge Thornfield said, her interest clearly piqued. Continue, Ms. Dalton. Trish approached the bench and handed copies to the judge and court clerk. Your Honor, the property at 847 Willowbrook Drive was purchased with an adjustable rate mortgage. The current monthly payment is $4,200, but beginning January 1st of next year, the rate adjusts upward, increasing the monthly obligation to $6,800. The courtroom went completely silent. Lana's face went white. Furthermore, Trish continued, the property was purchased with a balloon payment structure. The remaining loan balance of $340,000 becomes due in full in 18 months. What? Lana's voice cracked like breaking glass. Morrow was frantically shuffling through his papers. Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of these terms. Because your client never bothered to read the loan documents she signed, Trish said calmly. She was too excited about getting her dream house to pay attention to how it was financed. Judge Thornfield was reading the bank documents with growing interest. Ms. Dalton, please continue. Regarding the vehicle transfer, Your Honor. Trish pulled out another set of documents. The 2024 BMW X5 is not owned but leased, with monthly payments of $890, a mileage restriction of 10,000 miles per year, and early termination fees of $23,000. Mrs. Mercer has already exceeded the annual mileage limit by 3,000 miles in just 2 months, incurring additional fees of $200. Lana stood up so fast her chair fell backward. That's impossible. Evan bought me that car. No, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the hearing began. I leased you that car. You signed the papers. You just never read them. You lied to me. I never lied. I told you I'd found a way to get you the car you wanted. You never asked about the details. Morrow was sweating now, his confident demeanor cracking. Your Honor, surely there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Trish said, her voice cutting through the chaos, is Mrs. Mercer's assumption that she was getting assets instead of liabilities. Mr. Carver is transferring ownership of a house with $340,000 in debt and payments that increased to nearly $7,000 per month, plus a leased vehicle with $24,000 in existing penalties and fees. The courtroom erupted. Lana was shouting at me across the aisle, her perfect composure completely shattered. You set this up. You planned this. You knew exactly what you were doing. I gave you everything you asked for, I replied calmly. The house you had to have, the car you said you deserved, you got exactly what you wanted. Gregory had gone pale, his supportive hand dropping from Lana's shoulder like she'd caught fire. Lana, you never told me about any loans or— Because I didn't know! She spun on him, her voice rising to a shriek. He handled all the paperwork. He told me we owned everything. We never owned anything, I said. We borrowed everything. There's a difference. Morrow was frantically trying to salvage the situation. Your Honor, surely we can renegotiate the terms. Based on what? Judge Thornfield asked. Mrs. Mercer specifically requested these assets. Mr. Carver is giving her exactly what she asked for, including all associated financial obligations. Unless she wants to withdraw her petition? Lana looked around the courtroom like a trapped animal. Her mother was staring at her in horror. Gregory had taken a step back, his expression calculating as he mentally recalculated the cost of his new girlfriend. The gallery was buzzing with shocked whispers. This isn't fair, Lana screamed. He tricked me. He gave you what you demanded, Judge Thornfield said firmly. Mr. Morrow, does your client wish to proceed with the asset transfer as requested, or does she want to withdraw her petition and renegotiate? Morrow looked at Lana, who was hyperventilating now, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Your Honor, we need time to review. No, I said, standing up. She's been very clear about what she wants. She wants the house because it reflects her success. She wants the car because it makes her feel like the person she was always supposed to be. She wants the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. I looked directly at Lana, who was staring at me with undisguised hatred. Give it to her. Evan, please, Lana whispered, her voice broken. We can work this out. We can what? Go back to you telling Mason his father isn't good enough? Go back to you planning your future with Gregory while I pay for your dream house? I shook my head. You wanted to upgrade your life, Lana. Congratulations. You just did. Morrow slammed his briefcase shut, with a sound like a gunshot. This is unconscionable. Your Honor, my client was clearly deceived about the nature of these assets. Your client was given exactly what she demanded, Judge Thornfield replied, unless she wants to change her demands. The courtroom held its breath. Lana looked around desperately, at her mother, who was staring at the floor, at Gregory, who was checking his phone like he had somewhere else to be, at Morrow, who was gathering his papers with the frantic energy of a man planning his escape. Lana's voice was barely a whisper. I don't. Mrs. Mercer, Judge Thornfield said patiently, do you want the house and car, or don't you? Lana's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with a mixture of rage and something that might have been regret. Yes, she whispered finally. I want them. Then it's settled. Judge Thornfield signed the papers with decisive strokes. Mrs. Mercer, you are now the sole owner of 847 Willowbrook Drive and the 2024 BMW X5, along with all associated financial obligations. Mr. Carver, you'll have joint custody as requested, alternating weekends and holidays. I stood and walked toward the exit, past Lana, who was sobbing into her hands, past Gregory, who was already edging toward the door, past Denise, who looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. At the back of the courtroom, Mason was waiting with Jared. My son looked confused by all the shouting, but when he saw me, his face brightened. Dad? Are you okay? I'm perfect, buddy, I said, taking his hand. Ready to see our new apartment? As we walked toward the courthouse exit, I heard Morrow's voice rising behind us, sharp with professional panic. Lana, we need to discuss your options. The bankruptcy filing alone will take months, and then there's the foreclosure process. I didn't look back. I'd given Lana exactly what she'd asked for, everything she thought would make her happy. It wasn't my fault she'd never bothered to read the fine print on her dreams. The courthouse doors swung shut behind us, cutting off the sound of Lana's sobs and her lawyer's increasingly desperate voice. Outside, the sun was shining, and Mason was asking if we could stop for ice cream on the way to see our new place. Sure, buddy, I said, feeling lighter than I had in months. We can do whatever we want. Behind us, through the courthouse windows, I could see the chaos we'd left behind. Lana collapsed in her chair, Gregory nowhere to be seen, Morrow frantically making phone calls, and Denise staring at the legal documents like they were written in a foreign language. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd kept my promise. I hadn't fought her. I'd given her everything, absolutely everything. The last thing I saw before we reached my car was Lana stumbling out of the courthouse, her perfect dress wrinkled, her makeup ruined, calling my name across the parking lot with desperate urgency. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a sudden tightness that made me gasp. The world tilted sideways, the pavement rushing up to meet me as my vision tunneled to black. The last thing I heard was Mason screaming for help, and the sound of Lana's heels clicking frantically across the asphalt as she ran toward my collapsed form.